Hey folks, welcome to the Immigration Roadmap Show. I'm attorney Sharif Silmi. This is our first ever broadcast, so I'm really excited to take you today through the successful approaches to the EB1A visa. So for those of you who are less familiar with what an EB1A visa is, I'm going to explain. So essentially there are three main categories of employment-based visas in the U.S. immigration system. There is an EB3, which is a lower level category for individuals, usually who are either entry-level college graduates going into a profession, or even specialized occupations like chefs, for example. And then there are second category employment-based visas. These are for more advanced professionals who may have a master's degree or certain extraordinary abilities or more than 10 years of experience. What we are going to talk about today is one category within the first category employment-based visas. These are for individuals who have extraordinary abilities. So within the EB1A categories, there are three areas. One, EB1A is for individuals with extraordinary ability. Then there's EB1B, that is for outstanding professors and researchers. And there is EB1C, which is for multinational managers and executives. We are going to focus in today on EB1A, all right? So the EB1A visa is really, really interesting for a lot of reasons. One important reason is that it is one of only two visas in the employment-based U.S. immigration system that allows one to self-petition. That is, you do not need, or one does not need an employer-sponsored petition in order to move forward. You can actually move forward without an employer, without a specific job offer necessarily, and you can, again, self-petition. So that makes it a very, very attractive perspective for a lot of people. Whether you're inside the United States or outside of the United States, you are able to self-petition and allow yourself to become qualified there. So that is what we're looking at in terms of an EB1A visa. So understanding the requirements of an EB1A visa are, number one, that you must demonstrate that you're going to prospectively benefit the United States, that you are going to bring about future benefit to the US. And this is broken down into, number one, that you work in an area that is of national importance. So you are working in an area that is benefiting the country, that is helping out folks who are in the US. You're working in an area that's advancing US economy, that's advancing technology. Those are areas that are of national importance. We've been really successful in our practice helping out folks that are working in, for example, the biotech areas, financial tech. So you see a lot of innovation taking place in those areas. So any type of individual who is in sort of product development or product creation, and they are probably, let's say, for example, if you're from India, you have a situation where there's a huge backlog in the second category of visas. So you may be a professional, you may have a master's degree, you're doing really important work. However, you're not able to acquire the green card directly because there is a country quota backlog. For specific countries, there's only a limited amount of visas that are available. So what this does is it causes us to look at alternatives. We want to look at ways in which we can find alternatives to enter you into a permanent resident situation. So those who are in biotech, those who are in financial technology, you're creating products, you are pushing the envelope of innovation. There's a lot of opportunities for you to seek an EB1A visa. So again, the EB1A visa, we're looking at the situation where, number one, you're going to prospectively benefit the US. You're going to bring about future benefit to the United States. The second and most important criteria that I'm going to spend probably most of our time on today is that you demonstrate that you have sustained acclaim that is recognized within your field of endeavor. Sustained acclaim that is recognized within your field of endeavor. So when we're looking at this criteria or category, we need to demonstrate, how does one demonstrate sustained acclaim? What does that mean? What it means is that you are able to show the government a minimum of 3 of 10 criteria that exist. So what I'm going to do is, rather than go through the traditional avenues of EB1A, I want to look at the EB1A from the perspective of a professional. Because most people who reach out to me thinking about EB1A are concerned that, for example, they lack publications or they lack a PhD. Therefore, how can I establish myself as having an EB1A if I do not have a PhD? Well, we can do that by looking at the criteria. So let's just take, for example, what are the criteria involved? Number 1, so you need to meet a minimum of 3. I'm going to look at an individual, for example, working in financial technology or biotech. They're a professional. Even someone who's an engineer, maybe in even mechanical engineering or software engineering, they can also qualify under these criteria. The first criteria that I want to think about is that you perform in a critical role for an organization that has a distinguished reputation. So when we're thinking about the plain language of the statute, the language of the law, what does it say? It doesn't say that you're employed for an organization. It says that you perform for an organization. So this may be true whether you work directly for the company or if you are a consultant who is assigned to the company. I have many clients who are working for consultancy organizations and they are assigned to a specific company. It could be like Walmart, it could be Lowe's or some of these big companies. And we are seeing a lot of innovation at those organizations right now in logistics, for example, right? Because we're thinking about coronavirus, how do supermarkets avoid running out of toilet paper? Well, they hire really, really smart people who develop algorithms that control when the products reach those shelves and when they will likely run out. So to avoid a repeat of that kind of scenario, you have now more innovation taking place. So those of you who are involved in logistics, that is one area where we're seeing, again, a lot of penetration into the EB1A category. So you're performing for an organization that has a distinguished reputation. So what does it mean? It means basically that you're performing in an important role that is impacting the outcome of the organization's activities. That is how we define a critical role. So you are creating product, you are creating a process, you are solving a problem that is important to that specific organization's activities. That is what we're thinking about when we're thinking about a critical role for an organization. Now we have to see, what kind of organization is it? Is it an organization that has a distinguished reputation? Well, there are 2 ways to think about this. There's a general reputation and there's a specific reputation. So if you're thinking about the general reputation of the organization, then you're thinking about how many employees does it have? What kind of revenue does it have? Where does it rank in the Fortune 500? How large is the organization? But what if we just think about the specific reputation of the organization? So if we're thinking about the specific reputation of the organization, then if we're talking about biotech, financial tech, if we're talking about logistics, if we're talking about some kind of semiconductor space, we're thinking about what is the organization's reputation within this specific area. That is what we're thinking about when we're thinking about a distinguished reputation. So just to recap, the first criteria that one who may not be in a PhD or may not be a researcher, may not have publications, and they are interested in applying as an individual of extraordinary ability, They want to think about, do I perform in a critical role for an organization of distinguished reputation? They could be a consultant. They don't have to work or be employed directly with the organization. It can work out that way. The second area that I want to think about when I'm discussing or looking at whether one qualifies for an EB1A is whether they have made original contributions of major significance to their field of endeavor. Now, this differs from the critical role through it impacting not only the employer, but transcending the employer, impacting the field as a whole. So how have you impacted the field of endeavor? That is what is really, really important when we're looking at the criteria. So how have you shown that you have impacted the field as a whole? The best way to do this, in my view, is to narrow down your field of endeavor, okay? Because if you are saying, for example, that I am an expert in logistics, okay? I'm among the very best within the field of logistics. The question then we have to think about is how many people work in the area of logistics? There's probably hundreds of thousands, right? So if you have made a contribution that is of major significance to the field of logistics, that should be, that is going to be something that is really difficult to prove. And you're making it harder on yourself than you need to. So what I recommend you do is you narrow down your field of endeavor. So rather than say that I am in the field of logistics, I will say, for example, that I am in the field of, for example, health product logistics, delivering health product, or making sure that health products are reaching the marketplace in a appropriate way. That is narrowing down the field. So then you're not going up against every individual that works in the field of logistics. You're narrowing down your field. You're going, because if you say, I have an original contribution that is of major significance to the field, right? The field is broadly defined, then you are competing against too many people. Take, for example, my situation, right? So I want to say, okay, I am among the very best within my field of endeavor, right? So then I say, okay, well, what is my field? What is my profession? Okay, I'm an attorney. So am I going to make the argument that, and my life depends on this argument, that I'm going to get a green card or not, that I'm among the very best attorneys, very best within the field of law? That is a very difficult argument to make. I'm going to be competing against Supreme Court justices. I'm going to be competing against law professors. I'm going to be competing against attorneys who are doing multi-billion-dollar litigation. Why should I put myself in that situation? Rather than do that, I want to narrow down my field of endeavor. So instead of saying that my field of endeavor is law, I will say, actually, my field of endeavor is immigration law. Now, within the field of immigration law, I can make the argument that I have transcended my employer and made an impact, an original impact of major significance. But maybe I can narrow it down even further. Instead of saying my field is immigration law, I could say, actually, my field of expertise is employment-based immigration law. So where if I were to try to demonstrate that I'm among the very best within the field of law, I was competing maybe against 1 million attorneys. Now, when I think about only employment-based attorneys, employment-based immigration attorneys, I'm only in a field of maybe 3,000-4,000 people, and I can compare my qualification, my achievements against their qualification and their achievements, and we can see whether we are able to demonstrate contributions of major significance to the field. Okay, so you see, when we're looking at the analysis of an EB1A, we have to shift our vantage point such that we're able to shed a light on the importance of your work from a specific perspective. So when we looked at whether you perform for an organization of major, perform for an organization in a critical role, and that organization must have a distinguished reputation, we can look at the specific reputation of the organization within that field that you perform in. When we're looking at an original contribution of major significance within your field of endeavor, we're looking again at the specific field in which you operate in, okay? This will give you the opportunity to rise above the competition by narrowing down your field. So you don't have to be Albert Einstein type situation. You just need to be at the best or among the best at what specific endeavor that you have selected for yourself. That is the name of the game, is narrowing down your field of endeavor. So again, when we're looking at a professional who is applying for an EB1A, that is the highest level of employment-based immigration in the United States, number one, you perform for an organization in a critical or leading role that has a distinguished reputation. Number two, you have original contributions of major significance to your field of endeavor. The third, and I'm trying to give you an order of importance. I have not seen a situation where an individual meets those two criteria of performing in a critical role and having an original contribution of major significance and not ultimately be successful with their EB1A petition. Those are two very, very important foundations to qualify for an EB1A. The third, I think, in terms of importance, is that you command a high salary in relation to your peers. Let's be realistic, whether we like it or not, this is a very capitalistic society. So the government criteria mirrors that societal situation. So when they are assessing whether one has reached the highest level of his or her field, one of the assessing factors is going to be whether the individual commands a high salary. So in relation to their peers, so anybody out there, if you are in, like I mentioned, biotech, financial technology, if you're, we've done a lot of cases for people in logistics. That's why I'm talking about it. I mean, throughout this coronavirus episode, many people who work in logistics have reached out because remember, what was our first thing that we talked about? You work in an area of national importance, okay? That you are going to prospectively benefit the United States. So when we're able to show that one is benefiting the US through working in areas that are in need, that is going to be an important way to demonstrate that they qualify for an EB1A. So going back to the salary and looking at your salary in relation to your peers. Most people, when they do this, you can look at any approach that is there in terms of an EB1A. If you've looked at forums, if you've done your research, you're probably going to find that you're recommended to compare your salary with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a division of the US Department of Labor, with some of the websites that are out there that mirror that data. I recommend going beyond that, because what does the actual law say? The law says that you need to demonstrate that you have made these commanding a high salary in relation to your peers. So when we look at that, what I like to do is I like to take surveys, private surveys from, let's say, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, salary.com. Those private surveys, you can present the evidence that is going to put you in the most favorable light. I still want to include the Bureau of Labor Statistics, definitely, but I also want to make sure that I'm including the private data that's going to put you in the best light. I had several recent cases for individuals who were in database administration. So those of you who maybe in a software engineer or a database administration. I like to call it a database optimization, because then again, you're narrowing down your field. You have, for example, I've done many cases where they work or they perform on behalf of state agencies, right? So they work in you work for a consulting firm, you're assigned to a project within a state agency. Take, for example, a situation where you have replaced a legacy data collection or data system with a new and improved data warehouse, where you've transitioned from a legacy system to a new system. So that is your job. Number one, you're performing in a critical role for an organization that has a distinguished reputation as a state agency. Number two, you're having an original contribution of major significance. You're creating a new database that did not exist before, that is significant because it's making an impact on a public benefit. Number three, you command a high salary in relation to your peers. We all know that state employees will make less, for the most part, than private employees. So if you're working for a consulting agency, you are positioned within a state government agency. Your peers within that government agency that are working side by side with you, their salaries are usually public data, that's public information, at least for the position type. Then we compare that with the rate that you are billing the state agency as an external consultant. And 9 times out of 10, we are going to find that you command a high salary in relation to your peers. So again, that is a great way to demonstrate this fact. Number 4, when we're looking at the overall criteria, we want to say, have you reviewed and judged the work of others within your field of endeavor? So when we look at have you reviewed and judged the work of others, it is a question of whether you've reviewed and judged work outside of your normal course of employment. So if it's part of your job, if my job, right, as a managing attorney within the firm, is to make sure that the work of other attorneys or team is done correctly, that is not reviewing and judging the work of others. Reviewing and judging the work of others means that I am being asked as an expert within my field to review and judge other people's work. So that is what we're thinking about when we're thinking about reviewing and judging the work of others. I am an invited expert. So take, for example, a person, we talked about a database administrator. So a person who's creating databases within a public sector entity. And they've created a new database system for the state agency. And another individual, another database optimization expert or another state agency asked this person to come in as an external expert and to review and judge the work that's being done within this agency. That is called reviewing and judging the work of others. The more common way that we're able to demonstrate reviewing and judging the work of others is where a person has done peer review of journals. That is obviously very common. Or you've reviewed a PhD dissertation. But let's think about this for a second. So if you are a software engineer, okay, and you are working in creating applications or doing some amazing technological advancements within the field, and you are asked by, let's say, a startup or some other organization to review the algorithms for an up-and-coming application that's received, $1 million of seed funding. The complexity that has gone into developing that algorithm and application is far more complex than then a PhD dissertation, probably. I mean, depends, but probably, or even a postdoctoral publication. So if the government is willing to accept as a criteria of one being an individual of extraordinary ability that you have reviewed and judged peer-reviewed journals or PhD publications, then why would they not accept that you have reviewed and judged the interworkings of a software application? What I have seen is they will accept it as long as it's properly explained to them in the legal brief. So I would encourage anyone out there, if this has been holding you back, you have not applied under the category because, I have not done peer-reviewed journals, I have not published peer-reviewed journal, don't let that stop you. It's not going to stop. It hasn't stopped many thousands and hundreds of people before you, and it should not stop you. So reviewing and judging the work of others is a really, really important way to demonstrate that you are meeting the criteria. The other way that the fifth way, so remember you need 3 criteria. We're now looking at 4, that you have performed in a critical role for an organization that has a distinguished reputation, that you have original contributions of major significance within your field of endeavor, that you have commanded a high salary, that you have reviewed and judged the work of others. And by the way, this could be in the same or similar field. It doesn't have to be in the exact same narrow field of endeavor. The 5th area that we want to look at is, are you a member of a professional organization that requires outstanding achievement of its members? So what we want to think about when we're thinking about, are you a member of an organization that requires outstanding achievement of its members, is it just a paid membership? If you're just paying $100 to become a member, it's probably not going to qualify. You want to make sure the bylaws of the organization are such that they demand some outstanding achievement. You've been invited to do it. It's important. It's an elite group of professionals within your field, and you therefore have that professional membership. Then you can possibly look at, okay, do I have authorship of scholarly work? Have I been mentioned in the media? Things of that nature. So those are some of the criteria for one who is not necessarily a PhD situation or, a scholar, quote unquote. The last thing that you want to think about in terms of an EB1A is whether you will continue to work in your field. So if you're going to continue to work in your field, the government just wants to make sure, look, you are a mechanical engineer working at Tata Motors in India and creating the newest, latest, and greatest technology that's going to go into the Range Rover. Well, you're coming into the United States. Are you going to continue to work in the same field? Are you going to go into Detroit to General Motors, Ford, Tesla, whatever it is? Are you going to work in your same field? So those of you who are already in the United States, you don't really need to lose any sleep over it. You can definitely show that you will continue to work in your field of endeavor. So those are just some of the ways that we think about a successful approach to EB1A. We have, really shown a strong track record in this area of maybe for those of you who thought that it wasn't necessarily possible. So we can always, make the impossible possible. Or as Nelson Mandela put it, it always seems impossible until it is done. So those are the kinds of things we think about. And ultimately, we're going to be, joining you every couple of weeks. So this is the first of a series of presentations where we're going to think about different areas of the U.S. immigration system and how that can be, how it can be taken advantage of as we move into the future. Obviously, it's more than just, family-based immigration. There are really unique ways, whether it's through investment, through employment, self-petition, employer-sponsored petitions, things of that nature. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to think about please like our Facebook page, like our YouTube page. Ask us questions. You can email us at info@silmilaw.com. You can call our office. The number is 443-329-2929. We're just getting warmed up. So, we'll again connect with you in the future. And this presentation is intended for educational purposes. Do not act or fail to act solely based on the information provided. And always, always consult with an attorney. You can reach us again at 443-329-2929. Thank you very much. And please share it with your friends.